Welcome back to yet another episode of Mod Reviews Revamped. Today we are going to be going over a roughly enough item created by Daniel, which since there is a config, I'm gonna get that out of the way now. For the appearance, you can choose the theme being light, dark, which are the only ones. There's different recipe borders you can choose from. Default, lighter, and invisible. I'm realizing I should probably be in game for this, so give me a second. Alright, now we're in game. It actually shows you what the things will look like. So this is dark mode, and this is light mode. I'm gonna have it on dark mode for the video. Recipe border default being like that, lighter being like that, and invisible being like that, which I honestly kind of prefer it like this. You can choose whether motion should be reduced. I'm not entirely sure what that entails, but it's something. You can choose a recipe lookup style from unset, classic, composite. Oh, I think it's just classic and composite. It just didn't set before. Classic is just the normal system where you search. Composite is for more information. You can append mod name to, I guess, REI's version of Jade, which I did not know existed, but that could just be hovering over items. You can choose whether append favorite. You can choose whether you get a hint on the tooltip for adding it to favorites or not. I'm gonna have that on. You can also choose whether these should be rainbow. I'm not entirely sure what rainbow does, but it's a thing, so I'll leave that on. Under input you can find all of the keybinds, and then you can just click on it to set it. Pretty self-explanatory. Under layout you can choose where the search field should be, between center, bottom left, and top left. You can choose whether the config should be next to, top right, and then you can also choose whether there should be a craftable filter. See whether you are able to craft it with the quick crafting, I believe. All of this enabled. You can set boundaries for the search. By default, it's set to a limit of 50, alignment right for the horizontal, and a limit of 1,000 and alignment center for the vertical. Not entirely sure what the alignment changes per se, and the limit is just how many rows can be on the screen at a given time. To show it off, I'll put it at 25, and then you can choose a different amount of a limit for how many horizontal rows you can have. I'll put it at 14. Okay, so alignment's just between the area set for the GUI. You can also limit it by percentage rather than a set of rows. For example, 97.1 would look like that, and 50 would look like that, and then I guess 0% would be no rows. So that 80.2, put you in the center, and increase the limit to 80.2, and then escape to close that. You can choose where the panel should be on your screen. Right as the default, it can be on the left as the alternative, which I guess will put it on the left. You can choose whether to hide it when you are away from keyboard, I believe. No, when the search is not active. By default, that's disabled, but you can enable it. Accessibility section, you can have larger tabs, you can have larger arrow buttons, you can change when the scroll bar is enabled from when scrolling to always visible. You can toggle whether the clickable arrows should be, or rather when they're clickable, you can change the inventory search mode from enabled to disabled, which I believe you can also normally do with a double click. You can choose the overlay opacity from 0 to 100%. You can do the same thing with highlights. You can choose whether the vanilla recipe book should be enabled or disabled. You can choose where the static effects will be. I'll keep them on the right. You can configure filtering category. By default, this is how it's filtered, but you can reorder them by any means via the up and down arrows. And then you can also toggle whether they're enabled or disabled, and whether they're available or excluded from with quick craft. You can add your own custom rules via the system, which I'm not entirely sure how it works, so I'm going to be skipping over that. If you know how it works by any chance, feel free to leave a comment. You can set filter displays from enabled to disabled. You can also choose whether displays should be merged when they have the same recipe. By default, it's enabled, but you can disable it. I'm actually gonna try that disabled, see what happens. You can change how the list looks from paginated to scrolled. I'm gonna try out scroll. You can change the ordering from by registry to name, groups, registry descending, name descending, or groups descending. You can change the zoom level. Also, I'm gonna change that to name from 25% to 400%. I'm gonna set it to 50. You can change the focus mode for the state of entries, which will be presented, not just the highlights or whether they're highlighted or zoomed when you're hovering over it, I'd assume. I'm gonna set it to zoomed, and then you can set collapsible entry groups via the system by default. There's enchantment, splash potions, spawn eggs, music discs, potions, lingering potions, and tipped arrows in here, which are also toggleable, and then you can hit the plus arrow to add, and then you'd set an ID and select entries. So for testing, I'm gonna try and set one for all the class fans. I'm gonna add it to the group, and then dragging would appear to automatically select all that you hover over, and then you can hit back to set the thing. I'm gonna call it stained glass. This is the idea of the API done. There's now a new section called stained glass. There is a favorites menu. You can choose whether it's enabled or disabled. Favorites is just add to the sidebar thing. You can choose whether they're always visible set to when act. Mic changed midway through that sentence. My headset somehow unplugged, so that's fun. I'm gonna set it to when active. You can also set the game mode command from /game mode to game mode. Doesn't seem like you can change it this way, but it could be wrong. There's also one for the time command and the weather command. There's also a search setting area. You can choose whether syntax is colorful, plain underscored, or colorful and underscored. I'm gonna set it to colorful and underscored. You can set whether mod search is active, a prefix always active or always inactive. You can do the same for tooltips, tags, and identifiers. And then you can choose whether search should be asynchronized, which is enabled by default, but it can be disabled. You can choose whether cheats should be enabled or enabled when you're in creative. I'm gonna set it to when creative. You can set a method for how to cheat from grab to give. Grab being, I believe, you take that amount from the thing you do, and then give just gives you 64 of an item if I recall correctly. Might be wrong. I'm gonna set it to grab. You can choose the amount of items that should be there. By default, REI cheats one item and a stack when shift click, but it can be set to reverse, so click is a stack while shift click is one. And then you can also set the give command. Assumedly, there's a performance section for whether rendering should be batched or not, whether cached rendering should be a thing from disabled to enabled, whether on reload thread should be reloaded. Which thread should be reloaded. By default, it's REI, but it can be main thread as well. And then cache display lookup is just enabled disabled for whether cache should happen for display lookups. And then there's also a debug section about plugin performance of different areas. Not entirely sure how it works, but it is available. You can sort it by order or by duration. You can show whether to disable or enable a verbose printing of the search performance. You can disable or enable the entry list performance, I'd assume also logged, and then you can see a display of registry analysis as a breakdown. I guess to see how many displays there are per given interactable, such as crafting or composting. You can sort it by count or ID. And then there's a button to reload the plugins and reload the search, or to reset the mod. And there's also a search option setting. Well, not a setting, but a search to search for a setting within the config. And then to save that, you hit done. Alright, so re-recording the latter section, thus there's a bit of a jump. As such, it looks different because I reset the config so I can show things off better. And also I'm back in creative again. By default, when you're in creative, it will show you the recipe when you click on an item, such as the warp plank. If there is a smeltable variant of the block, let me go find one, such as coal, which comes from coal ore or deep slate coal ore. It can also show you the same thing in a smoker. You can also hover over a painting for what it is precisely. I'm not sure if that's a new Minecraft thing or not though. You can also see all of the MBT tags by clicking on the item. You can also pop it out by adding it to your favorite, and then when you hit open expanded view, it will show like this, which will then show all the sub items of the foods, fruits. And then you can add it to your favorites, as I've shown already. You can also delete it by sending it down there. You can do similar for recipes. You can also scroll through variants by hovering over the item and scrolling. It will also show you all the accepted items for the item. If you hit crafting, or I guess just the category, it'll show you all the categories and all the recipes in those categories, such as crafting, smelting, I don't know what order this is in, smelting, smoking, campfire, stonecutter, brewing, composting, stripping, smithing, anvil, beacon payment, pathing, waxing, wax sculpting, and oxidizing, oxidation, scraping, and then just the tags, which you can also scroll through the pages with the scroll bar, and then in them it'll show you the tags. Another example being the signs. Signs has two derivatives of standing and wall, and then there are subsigns. I believe it's similar for the hanging signs as well. Yeah, wall hanging signs contains the wall hanging signs. And then if things are grouped, you can alt click to ungroup them. It will show you all the entries, and then if you hover over any of them, you can alt click to lapse again. The reason why this is 2 pages instead of 3 is because I made a couple more groups, such as the sugar group and the trial, as well as light. And then you can also click here to go back, no, shift click to choose a page, and then enter a number such as 99. I think it just takes you to whichever one is closest to it. If I type 100, that's still page 2. So just the max if it's above it. Now I'll be right back because I'm going to show off some of the config options. Alright, I'm back. I've enabled zoom and scroll, hence why there's a scroll bar here. And what the zoom does is when you hover over an item, it zooms in on that item and pops it out. And then with the scroll bar, you can scroll through the whole thing rather than looking for a specific page. I kind of prefer the scroll system, but if there's more mods, it's probably a better idea to use pages. Anyways, with that out of the way, the review is done. Apologies if any of the prior config section was a bit sloppily done and or inaccurate. I was recording that around, I want to say 7 or 8 p.m. EST, and also I think after streaming as well. Thus, it's not the best one I've done. So if you have any tips or anything, leave them in the comments, or any corrections to things I have gotten wrong. If you wish to join the Discord, you can find it up in the top corner. You can also find my blue sky down in the description. I believe my Twitch is also somewhere in the description. If not, it's in the channel description. Or you can go to the Stoat Lord plus the archive, which is linked on my channel, to view my stream stuff or just join streams and stuff. Anyways, peace. I'll see you in the next one. Also, a quick little side note, you can use U to find the uses for an item and R to find the recipe for an item.